actually started or revamped this club in college when I was probably in first or second sem. And today we are a community with a lot of good projects, and we are a community of great people and great coders, right? So today's session, I think Mr. Vaitheeswaran is proficient in web development. He's going to give you probably an introduction to web development, probably on the layer, probably the first layer, the outer layer of web development. I really hope you guys take away a lot from this session. It's really what you take away at the end of the day. Probably it can be any particular, even it can be a single line of code which you can remember, right? You don't know how it's going to help you. Maybe it's going to help you somewhere down the line in an interview, or like to solve a particular problem, right? So try to focus on the more, on the longer run of it. It's what you take away from today. You don't have to learn the whole thing what probably Vaitheeswaran here is gonna teach you or something like that, but the objective of it is to get you induced into this environment, right? So have a great session, and thank you for the opportunity to be here and represent the college and the Student Developer Initiative community. Thank you for the opportunity, Dan, and all the best to you guys too.
Oh, thank you, Nandeesh, and Vaitheeswaran. You can just give.
Thank you, Nandeesh. Hi everyone. I'm Vaitheeswaran from Student Developer Club and VIT. I'm the web dev head of our club, and I've been doing web dev for around 3 years at this point, like almost 3 years. And I'm hoping that today's workshop will be of some use to the participants, especially for the hackathon which you guys have coming up on Thursday. So I'm really hoping this could have get you guys curious, or get you guys to explore this domain more in order to make a project in this domain, because even a project in this domain counts too. So first, I thought I'd probably want to tell a little bit of myself and my web dev experience. So like web dev, when you see at first, web development might seem like a very big, hard to tackle domain, but once you start learning, this goes for anything. Once you start learning, you can see the bits and pieces and the parts you need to learn to become proficient at it, to become hireable at it. So so that's what, like, my whole experience has been me learning first, basics like long back, and then doing, front end, back end, full stack web development, doing DevOps with it. So yeah, that's what, like, my whole idea of this seminar won't be very like intermediate, or it'll be very beginner friendly. So even if you have no experience with HTML, CSS, or JavaScript, you will still be able to pick up what I'm going to tell. So even if you have no prior web dev experience, you'll still be able to do something. So that's what I hope to do with the seminar. So before that, I landed that I should probably brief you guys about what a hackathon would be like and what you guys would do in a hackathon, right? So when you hear the word hackathon, you probably would think it would have something to do with hacking or something, but most of the times hackathons either can be one of two things. So they can either be competitive programming hackathons or development hackathons. So competitive programming hackathons are ones where, so how you write your, like your C++ Java programs, where you find some particular thing, like find the unique items in a list of, like, in a bag full of items, something like that. So you'll be solving problems like that. But the hackathon which you guys have this Thursday is called the Development Hackathon, and this is where you develop something. So it can be an application, it can be a web app, it can be an Android app, or a Web3 blockchain based like app, or something that uses the cloud in any format. Yeah. So yeah, that's what, like, this is a development hackathon. So you need to develop something for it. So I thought I'd share what a general hackathon might look like, so you guys can go into this hackathon knowing at least what to expect, in this whole event. So just a second, let me share my screen. Yeah, I hope you guys can see my screen. You guys can see my screen, right?
Yes, Vaiti, yes.
Yeah. So yeah, let me just walk. So this is a hackathon which is happening on December 2nd to 4th in Bangalore. So this is at KTPO, that same Comic Con venue where in Whitefield that happens. So this is a hackathon that's happening on 2nd to 4th, and this is an Ethereum blockchain based hackathon. And this hackathon I have applied for. So I'll walk you through what it would be like. So for you guys, you have a single day hackathon, right? So you start in the morning, you start developing something, whatever it could be, a website, an app, or something, and you finish it by the end of the day. But there are also hackathons like this where you have multi-day hackathons. So it starts on December 2nd to 4th. They give me a place to stay there, so I stay for like 48 hours plus, and I'll have to come up or develop with some application which they might like. And if you develop something that the judging panel likes, then you might win prizes. So the same goes for your hackathon. The first place winner gets 4K, and like so you have prizes too. So that's what a development hackathon is. It's so that people come together, you build something, you develop something, and based on what you develop, there could be different criteria like how good it looks or how functional it is, stuff like that. Based on that, you will get graded, and there will be winners and all that announced, and there will be prizes. So in case of this Ethereum hackathon, we will have Ethereum related prizes. So we'll have swags, goodies for related to Ethereum, and we will have cryptocurrency prizes. But in your hackathon, you have 4,000 rupees for the first place winner, and so on. So yeah, that's what a general hackathon is. So you guys come, you start when the hackathon starts, you start developing something, either right from scratch or you might have done it before. So that is something you need to cover with like your organizers. But yeah, it's something that you either develop on spot or a little before. But you need to develop over that period, and based on how you develop and what your application is, you will get graded. So that's what a hackathon is. So now that I've covered what the hackathon is, my whole idea with this session is I am hoping to prepare people to participate more in this hackathon by possibly contributing something in web dev, something in web development. So yeah, um, getting back to what our project will look like. So over the course of this workshop, we will be making something that looks like this. So a very simple page. You just have, the name of your site. You can have anything here. Just a simple banner. You'll have a very simple avatar, the logo of your company or whatever, and a very simple form. And just it's a normal form, like how you submit, your Google Forms and all of that. So this will be your email and passwords. And when you submit, you can get the values of whatever you've entered in here. So this is what we'll be building over the course of the workshop, and I hope you guys have fun. And yeah, if at any point, if you guys have doubts, please note them down. And at the end of the session, you guys can ask me. You can raise your hand, and at the end of the session, you can ask me. So if you have doubts, write it down and ask me at the end. Don't interrupt in between because I might not be able to see it as well. So ask me at the end.
Yeah, just paste your questions in the Q&A.
Yeah,
Ask the doubts. Any doubts, you can just clear it out.
yeah, exactly. Okay, yeah. So let's get on with the hackathon. I'll be closing my video for now. Okay, so yeah, let me share my screen. So yeah, you guys can see my code space, right? Can you guys see my code editor?
Yes, Vaitheeswaran.
Yeah. So yeah, first I'll be covering with what a general, like the general structure of a website is. Any website you take, anything that's built on the web has this one general structure. So they will have three main types of files. There could be other different types of files, but most of them will have three main types of files. So they have a HTML file, a CSS file, and a JavaScript file. So HTML, it stands for Hypertext Markup Language, and HTML is supposed to be like the skeleton. So this is supposed to represent like what your website would look like just the base skeleton of it, like just like the form elements that I have here. So for example, this image is something I need to add in HTML. So if I don't add an image element here in HTML, it'll be hard for me to add elsewhere. So this is all part of the main skeleton, right? That there is a image here, that there's an input here, there's a button here. So HTML is used for the skeleton, and it's a markup language. So a markup language is something where you would be marking up parts of the text. For example, there is another language called XML, which is used to mark up like the data that you'd be displaying, something like that. So when you're doing Android development, you'd be using XML files a lot. So in case of web, we use the HTML files. Okay. And similarly, you have something called CSS. So CSS stands for Cascading Styling Sheets. So CSS is used for styling the web. So right now, if you look at this, if you look at this, if I just have the bare bones of the application, it would just have an image, these inputs and this the button. But for the button to have this color, for my background to have this pink color, for this banner to have this gradient color, all of this has to be provided via styling. And for styling, we use CSS, that is cascading styling sheets. And you also have something called SCSS and all. I won't get into that. It'll be a little bit complicated. So yeah, and then finally, mainly, so what makes your website interactive? What makes it, like alive? What lets you use it? So all of that is mostly done via JavaScript. You also have other web scripting languages, I would call PHP and all of that, which can let and allow your websites to be functional and like interactive. But the most common language used across like the world for developing websites, more than around I guess 80% of the websites are on JavaScript. So JavaScript is again OOPS language. So you've already studied the concept of OOPS, I guess. Like you would know that there's you have classes, you'll have functions, you have objects and all of that. So JavaScript is an OOPS language. It's again a general purpose language. It's not that JavaScript has to be used only for the web. You can use it for anything. You can use it even for your lab programs, anything. It's just more very conveniently, it has a lot of functions and things that we will use, libraries that we'll use for the web. So yeah, we will be covering all these three types of files and what they have, what what makes each file, what are the contents of each file, what is the building block of every file. We'll be covering all of that. And yeah, so in general, whenever you click on a website, most of the times, all these, at least these files or some permutation and combination of these files will be sent over to you. Now, for example, if I look at this site here, Tailwind CSS, I'll be covering this later. Now, if I look at the site and when I reload this, so this network tab that you have in your developer tools, you can use it to examine what files and what files are coming from the server back to you. So right now in this, I can filter by HTML and you can see there is 3 of these HTML files which were sent back to you, successfully. And if I look at CSS, there are even more CSS files which are sent to you. And if I look at JS, again, there's a lot of JS files sent to. So that's what in any typical website interaction, these files are sent to you and your browser renders these. So your browser outputs these into a format which you can view and you can interact with. But what the server is like, the only thing that a server is doing is sending these 3 files and your browser tries to make sense of it. This is why a web browser is important, because if you have a good web browser, it might not be able to render the page. So again, yeah, that's what happens in most general, like websites. You have these 3 files or any permutation of these 3 files that are sent over to you. Your browser renders these. Now we'll be working with these 3 files in today's workshop, and yeah, we'll be going through the building blocks of all of these. So yeah, first coming to the HTML file. So I told you HTML is the main skeleton of your, like the main skeleton of your like website, right? So I told you every single thing that you put up has to come in HTML. But before we go to those things, like a button, an input, like all of these different components, before we go to those, we should first discuss what's the general structure of a HTML, like a HTML file. So in a HTML file, in general, first you would have something that composes, like you would have a HTML tag. Yeah. So and in HTML, so it's a markup language. So everything that you're, like recording or like everything that you are writing has to be enclosed between a set of tags. So if I write a tag called HTML, there will be a closing HTML tag. So most of every single tag will have a closing tag. For some tags, you might not be, like in case of this. So in the most basic tag you can put in the HTML file is the HTML tag. Okay. So without this, your browser will not know that this is supposed to be HTML and it's supposed to render this. So you need to start with a minimum bare, HTML tag. And if there is again, as I said, if there's a start HTML tag, it should be a closing HTML tag. So the way you write the tag is you need to start with your angle braces. So that is shift and the key above your space. So you have your angle braces and you can type the name of the tag. So it can be anything, like a table or something. And if you close this, this will be the opening tag. Like this will be the opening part of the tag. And to close this, you will need another closing, like the same tag, but it should be preceded by a forward slash. So again, for HTML, this is the opening tag, and this preceded by a forward slash will be the closing tag. So in between all of this, you can put all the content you want to put. Okay. So yeah, this is the basic thing we have set up now. So we need to have a minimum HTML. We need to have a bare minimum HTML tag, right? So we have set up a HTML tag. Besides this, you also generally have a tag called head and a tag called body. I'll come to what they do, but it would be really good actually if you guys would just type this along with me, because it would be nice if it were an interactive session. Like if you guys have some problems or errors while doing it with me, then you guys can, ask me at the end of the session. So you guys can type this with me. You don't need a code editor like this. You can do this in Notepad too. So you don't have to worry about that. Just create a new file, open it up in Notepad, something .html, save it with a .html extension, and start typing this. So you need to have an opening and closing HTML tag. Similarly, an opening and a closing head tag, opening and closing body tag. So this is a bare minimum you need to have. Now, what is a head tag doing? So head tag is used to, so imagine when you load a website, before any of the website is like rendered here, any of the content that you see before that, if you want to do some kind of pre-processing, like before this is rendered, I want to include some file, or say I want to display the name here. So you see it says save in CSS, none of that, and it says meet here with a meeting ID, none of that. So this is called the title of your website. So title of the website is what shows up in your tab. So stuff like this, or stuff that you need to do before displaying your website, like including some file. Like in most cases, we'll be including a CSS file. I told you the stuff that you use for styling. You will have to include that CSS file. That CSS file will have some code about how you should your website should be styled. Now, if I send just the HTML to the user, and if I don't tell them how to link up the CSS, or tell which CSS to use to style it, then it will just render the HTML and it look very bad. So in order to tell that, like before the website is rendered, I also need to link the CSS file. Stuff like this, wherever, like before you render any of the body, you want to either link files or mention, like the title of the website. Stuff like that, you would put it in your head tag. So within the head tag here, there is a tag called title.
So excuse me, Vaithi.
Yeah.
So you can zoom it out a little bit.
Zoom it out. Zoom it in or not?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So we have a head tag, and within a head tag, you will have a tag called title. Now, if you ask me how do I know that a HTML file should have a HTML tag, a head tag, it should have a title tag inside. Like you can ask me, like, how do I know this? So HTML has already defined these tags. There is a set of tags that you can use, and they all have special meaning. Like head tag andre, I need to put my title on it, or I need to put the files that I'm linking. Body tag means that's the thing that will be rendered. So these are all already written out, and you can just find them by looking it up. So you can just find all your HTML tags and the list of all of this. So you will realize what does what and all of that. So like see, you have a resource from W3 Schools, so you can find out the list of all the possible tags you can have, and they've given all the functions, like what is there for what tag, stuff like that. So you can go through that guide later, but for now I'll tell you the bare minimum you need to know to write a single HTML file. So for a HTML file, starting with again, you need a HTML tag. Inside that, you need a head tag and a body tag. Inside the head tag, at least minimum, you need to have a title tag. So you can tell what the name of the site will be. So here I'm having a title saying it's code. Okay, like code with me or something. Okay. So a head tag will have a head tag has the provision for having a title tag inside. So you guys can put a title tag, give whatever name you want. Whatever name you give here is the name that will show up in your browser tab when it's being rendered finally. So yeah, code with me. And then yeah, this is your body tag, coming to your body tag. Now in your body tag, I told you this is where you put the actual content of the website. So anything that you see in this website, like in here, you're seeing this whole navbar, you're seeing this ad here, you're seeing this. Anything that goes on your actual website that you can see, all of this will go inside the body tag. So if I need to put anything here, so since I told you our final site that will be building this thing, so we can start making something like this. So here I have this text called h1, right? How do I print text? Now for printing text onto this, I can have I can just directly type out text. Now if I don't put any tags or something, and between anywhere inside the body tag, if I just put text, the text will also be rendered just like that. It won't like the text won't have any special meaning. It will just print it out like a string. Now if you want to view this, you guys can open the folder where it is in. So in my case, that's all. You can just open with the file explorer. So this is where my HTML file is. Yeah. So yeah, new.html. Now I can just open this file up. See, now when I open this file up, the title that I put in here, in the head tag. So this is before this HTML is put out on the website. I want to assign the title of code with me to my website. So now you'll have this title of code with me. Okay. And inside that, I told you, inside the body tag, whatever I put, it will treat it as a text unless I'm putting inside tag, inside some other tags. Now I just directly put HTML inside that. So it will just directly print HTML. But you can look at this, you can't even see the HTML, right? If I want a login page, I will need something which is very big, something that you can see very well, right? So HTML has defined these set of tags called heading tags. And these heading tags are used for, like different sizes of text. So these are used for, like, imagine making a login page. So you need a really big text saying it's login page, right? So for stuff like that and for other use cases and all, you have a tag called heading tag. The heading tag starts with a H, and after the H, you have a number. The number can go from 1 to 6. So it can be like H1, H2, H3, H4. H1 is the largest. H1 is very large. Okay. So and H2 is it's much smaller. H3 is smaller. H6 is the smallest. So I'll just show you both of those as an example. So imagine I have H3, H1 tag, and I'll be like, this is a H1 heading. So again, I told you, between this tag, whatever comes will be treated as text. So between this H1, whatever is coming will be treated as a string. So this whole H1 heading thing, it will just be printed out directly. Now similarly, let me create a H6 tag. So if I create a H6 tag, and then we remove this HTML. So yeah, now since we don't have any JavaScript or anything, which is going to automatically update the code, you will have to refresh it to see the effect. So yeah, I told you H1 is really big, right? So I created a H1 tag, so this is a H1 heading, and this is a H6 heading. You can see how the H6 is much smaller than H1. So in our case, this is pretty big, but it's not as big as a H1. So we can put something like H2 maybe. So let's just put H2 for now. Remove this, and if I refresh, I see it says, like this is a H1 heading. Great. So now we have figured out how to put headings onto our body, right? In our body, you can just put a heading tag. The heading can be H1 to H6. So 1 being the largest, 6 being the smallest. Inside this, you can put the heading. Now, besides that, you have a lot of tags in HTML. Again, like I would recommend you guys to go through this whole reference sheet and figure out what tags are available, so you guys can make your own, more innovative sites. But now I just go through the most importantly used ones. So again, besides this, see, heading is great. Like heading is great because you can print something very big, or this is you wanted to, want to print it in. But imagine I need to put a whole paragraph of text. Okay, like some really big paragraph of text. In that case, we use a tag called paragraph tag. So that's represented by P. So again, you have P, and within that you put whatever content you want. So closing P tag, and inside this you can put whatever content you want. So for now, I just copy this same thing and paste it over and over. So I bring this up, so you can see this. The paragraph tag will print it at a slightly smaller, like font size than the heading tag. Plus, it won't be bold by default. Headings are bold by default. So this is useful whenever you want to print like a lot of information to read. Like in this case, if you look at this, you would have a whole paragraph of text somewhere. Like say colors or address. Just if I go to something here, if I have a whole paragraph of text like this thing. So if you have a whole paragraph of text to put in, you would put it inside a paragraph tag. And we can also check this here if you want. So if I inspect this, you would have something like a paragraph tag. See, you guys can see P tag, inside the P tag, you put some stuff. So yeah, that's what again, paragraph tag is used to put, a bunch of stuff in the paragraph. So this is your paragraph tag. Now, besides that, you have a tag called anchor tag. Now, this is the most important tag that you'll be using a lot because anchor tags are used to provide links to other stuff. So for me, in this whole website, for me to even go anywhere, if I'm clicking on this, it's redirecting me to somewhere else. Well, for this to happen, like when I click on this, it should link to something else. All the links that you're giving will be provided via your A tags. A stands for anchor. So this A tag, for now, let me just open and close the A tag. In between, I don't put anything. But in the A tag, every tag now, yeah, one more thing. So every tag also has something called attributes. Now, so far, whatever I've done, I've just written the tag name, right? Like HTML, head, body, H2P, A. I've just written the tag name. But tags also have something called attributes. Attributes are like, like your Java object. So when you have a Java object, you give some global variables, right? Every object has its own copy of that. And based on that, it will have some different values. Like one object can have a is equal to 5, one more object will have a is equal to this. Similarly, every tag already has a predefined, you could say variables like or attributes. There are some predefined attributes which exist on them. Like for example, the p tag, all of these tags will have a tag called style tag which exists on them. And in that style tag, you can put some string, like telling about how this h2 should be styled. So I'll come back to this later. But yeah, all of these have something called an attribute. And to write an attribute, you write it after the tag, give at least one space minimum, and the name of the attribute. Again, how do you know the names of the attribute? You can go back to your reference sheet and just see your attributes. So yeah, HTML attributes. See, tags will have an attribute like async, alt, color, data, form, stuff like that. So there's many different attributes you can play around with. But yeah, for now, for the sake of this workshop, I'll be covering the most important ones. So for your anchor tag has a specific attribute. That attribute is called href. Okay. Href is used to provide links. So again, I told you, anchor tags is how you can provide this whole linking to different applications, like different sites, right, or different parts of the same site. So in this href, inside a string, so within double quotes, I can provide a link where this will go to. So for now, imagine I can just copy this whole link and I can just paste this link in here. Now, this, if I reload, will show up as a, okay, one more thing. I forgot to put the content inside this. So I can put something like click me or something. So yeah, so you have an anchor tag, a link about where it should go to when you click it, and the text that will show up for this. Now, anchor tags by default, whatever the content that you put inside them, like this click me and all, it will show up in a blue highlighted underlined text, like the way you have normally seen links, something like this. But it'll be blue color. So the normal links that you see on normal websites, they're all anchor tags. Even these are anchor tags. If I reload this will show up. See a blue, a blue color text with the underline, it's signifying that it's a link. And if I click on this, it will open up this website. So again, anchor tags are used to provide links to other websites, but to provide the link, you need to provide it in the href attribute. So for every attribute, you set the value. You have attribute, you put equals and the value of the attribute. Usually the value of the attribute, you put it in a string, so within double quotes. In case of href, you should put the link it should go to when I click. And yeah, when you do click me, it will go there. Okay, yeah. So covered some basic tags, some basic attributes. Okay, so before that, yeah, let's just make a basic skeleton of our final form. So our final form should look something like this. So there's a h2 heading. We've already done the h2 heading. So we already have the h2 heading. Let me just change that. Okay, yeah. So we already have a h2 heading. H2 heading. What else do we need? We need an image. We need this form input. Form input. We need a button. Okay. So let me come to that. So yeah, let me just change this up because that's a welcome there. And just make it just like that. So this should say welcome. A h2 it says welcome. And paragraph tag I don't need because there's no paragraph there. And I don't exactly need this anchor tag either, but I can remove it for now. Okay. We also had this thing. So we had an image, then we had input, and we had a submit button. So let me just make the okay, image. So for the image, you have a tag called img image. And again, like I told you, anchor tag has an attribute called href. Similarly, an image tag has an attribute called src, which will point to the source of the image, like if there is any source of the image or something. Now, the reason why I'm showing is that I'll come to that, but every image tag has something called a source, just like how we have the anchor tag href, the link. Image, you have an attribute called source, and the source will also point to a link. So imagine you have some, image that you want to put, like something like this. You can find an image here. Okay, like imagine you have some web image somewhere on the website. Okay, like somewhere on the web, and if you want to copy that over, you can just put the link here and it will display the whole image. In my case, I already have an image in my same folder, in the same folder where I created that HTML file. So if you already have it in the same folder, you can just provide the same name of the file, like the image. So the name of my image here is jz.jpg. So I can just provide the name of the image. So image with source will be jz.jpg, and then yeah, I'm having a floating image tag. So if I do this, my whole image will be displayed. But this is a problem now. I got welcome, but my image is being displayed in full resolution, which is not what I want. In this case, it's much shorter, it's much smaller, and it's rounded. So that is something we'll do with styling, and I'll come to that in the next part of our workshop. But for now, we have linked our image. And if your image was present somewhere else in the same folder, like imagine there was a folder called images. And inside that, if I had my images, so it's there in this in the root folder, you have index.html and you have a folder called images. In that, I have jz.jpg. So if I want to put it there, then I can put this as images slash this. So I should always start with from your root directory. Is it there in some other directory or is it already there in the same directory? If it's there in the same directory, you can directly give the file name. But if it's there in another directory in your same root level, like there is a directory called images. There's a folder called images. Inside that, I have this. So you can put images, then slash the file name or the image name. So if I refresh this should work again now. So yeah, this should work. But then here I've not updated this. So if I refresh this should not work. See? But instead I got a text called picture of a bird flying. This is another attribute of the image tag. Now imagine something happens to your image, like your image is not there or something happens to your image. Your usage or you have very bad network. The person has very bad network, so this image won't load for them. They should at least have some idea of what the image was, right? For that, you have another attribute called alt. So alt will be the alternate text which will be displayed if the image was not being, if the image was not displayed. Say the image was not displayed because they have very bad bandwidth, like their network is very slow or something like that. If the image is not displayed, you can put an alternate text to display in case the image is not displayed. So something like like something that will tell them what this was. So you can just tell this was the this was an image of a bird, something like that. So yeah, now in this case, the image is displaying, so it won't show the alt text. But imagine I change this up a little, my link to my image. So there is a folder called image, so they should not display the image, right? So it will display an alternate text. This was the image of a bird. So yeah, let me just bring this back up and refresh. Okay, so we have H2, we have an image, then we have a couple of inputs, and then a button. So before I go to the inputs and the buttons, I will need to talk about three main tags. So far, let's do a small revision of what we've done so far. Every HTML file should have a basic HTML tag, opening and closing tag. Closing tags are preceded by the /. And inside the HTML tag, you should have a head section and a body section. Inside the head section, you put the stuff that you want to set before the site is loaded. So either something that comes in the title. Title is what comes in the tab, something like this. So either that or you want to link to other files, like the CSS file. If I want to link to that, if you want to link to other files, if you want to link to other files before the site, full site gets loaded, you put that in the head. Besides that, you have other tags called meta tags, and all you put that, but I won't come to that now. And then yeah, body. In body, you put the actual content of the website. So in our website, what do we have? We have the H2, and then we have the image, and then some inputs and all of that. So all of that will go inside the body. Now, there are three main tags that I want to talk about before we proceed with the styling. After this, we are going to do the styling and then JavaScript. Before that, I'll talk about three main important tags we need. So far we learned about heading tags, paragraph tags, anchor tags, image tags. Now, how do you group some tags together? Like if you look at this, it looks like these inputs and this whole submit is grouped together. It looks like it's part of one whole thing. Let me just update this here. Yeah. Yeah. So it looks like this whole thing is one part of a group, right? How do you know that this whole thing is one part of a group? Like you guys might have seen this a lot on videos and all. There's a tag called a div tag, right? You might have seen that a lot. A tag called a div tag and a span tag. and all of these. So these are kind of the most biggest building blocks you've ever seen any HTML site. So the div is responsible for grouping stuff together. Div is like it's like a whole divider. Like this whole thing is one group. So all of the stuff that you want in one group, you put it inside a div tag. There's also something called span, which is very similar to this, but it works a little in different ways. So I'll cover both of these now. So yeah, coming back to our HTML. So we have H2. Yep, and imagine I have two more. Okay, first let me cover the span tag because it's much easier to cover. So span is very similar to div. Inside span also you can group stuff. So imagine I want to group one H1 and I want to group one H2. So inside this H1, I'll just put H1. Inside this, I'll put H2. Let me just make this right here. So yeah, within the span, I have a H1 tag which says H1 and a H tag says H2. Now imagine I'm making other span tag like this. So this has this and this. So now if I okay, that's what. So I have two sets of span tags. Inside that I have one H1, H2, H1, H2. So I've grouped the H1, H2 under one span tag. Here also I've grouped the H1 and H2 under the span tag. So if I look at this, so you see it says H1, H2, H1, H2 actually. Let me change this up to a paragraph. Paragraph. Okay, and maybe use. Okay, wait, let me just remove the tag now. And I can have something like this is span 1 and this is span 2. So normally that's what you can also put tags under this, but I want to show the difference between span and them. So I'll come to that. So that's what inside span I have text saying span 1. Inside another span I have a text saying span 2. Now if I refresh the site, you can see span 1 and span 2 are coming right next to each other. So if I try to inspect this, so you guys can inspect by right clicking, you'll have an inspect element or inspect something like that. You go to that and there'll be an arrow icon here. So if you click on that, you can click anything in your in your browser view and you can try to inspect that particular HTML element. So if I click on this, it will show me the tag which is here. So the span 1 is what? It's a span tag. I can click on this, it will show me that this is span 2 tag. So now when I look at it, it says span 1, span 2, and these both are like right next to each other. So you can look at their borders. So this blue highlighting is their border. One second, let me just zoom in. So yeah, you guys can look at this blue highlighting. So this and this are right next to each other. So when you put something in a span, so before I explain that, there's something called inline element and block element. Okay, so a block element is something that blocks the whole width of the like the whole width of the screen. So if I had a block element and if I put some text in it, it will block this whole width of this. So if I take this welcome, look at this. The welcome is going across the whole width of the screen. But if I look at the span tag, it's allowing, it's only taking as much space as it needs, and right after that another span comes. But if I look at the H1, it's taking the whole width of the screen. So H1's headings, these are block elements. Block elements means they take the complete width of the screen. So they block the whole row. But inline elements means they allow other stuff to come in the same line as them. So they're called inline elements. So what we have here span is an inline element. So and also yeah, if you guys need to know how to comment in HTML, so in my case I have the editor, but yeah, I'll just show you. So for comments in HTML, you start with an angular brace, exclamatory mark, and then hyphen hyphen, and then whatever you want to write inside that, and then hyphen hyphen, close it. So this is a comment in HTML. This won't be rendered by the browser. This is only for your understanding. So you can put this in here to signify that span as an inline element, just for your revision when you do it. The span is an inline element. That means it allows another span to come in the same line because span is again inline. It will take only as much space as it needs and it will allow another span to come in the same line. Now, what's a div? So you've seen most of the stuff that you see on websites. They're not spans. They're all divs. So what's the difference between a div and a span? If you look at all these, div, div, all these are divs. Div is a block element. Again, both of them are used to group stuff together, but a div is a block element. And if I take a div and inside this, imagine I put something. I put like div1 and I put something like div2. So I have div1, div2, and a span1, span2. Now, if I refresh this page, the divs, so what do you guys, what do you think should happen? The divs should come on separate lines because I told you that divs are block element and spans are inline. So if I refresh this, the divs will come on separate lines. So this whole div1 is on a separate line, this whole div2 is on a separate line. So it will block the whole row so that nothing else can come. So this can be very important in terms of styling and all that. Now, if I look at this, if I put the image in a span, right? The image, then the span will only take as much space as the image needs, and it will allow everything else after it to come right after it because there'll be that much space left. But because I've put this in a div, so you can look at this. I've put this whole thing in a div, and inside the div, I have an image. Now, because I've put this whole thing in a div, and I put this in the div. So if you look at this input tag that you have, the input tag is by default, it's inline. That means if there's another input tag, it will come in the same line. But because I've wrapped this input tag in a div, so I've wrapped this input tag in a div, div. Again, I've wrapped this other input tag in a div. It is going to take the whole length, it's going to take the whole width of the row. Like see this particular input tag which is there in this div will take the whole width of the row. So these both will not come on the same line anymore. So that's why you use divs. You can use divs to put stuff on different lines if you want. But yeah, the most logical reason why we use them is to group stuff together. Like for example, if you look at this, there is another div tag, and inside that I have this image tag, and I have other children div tags. So I have another div tag which has the input, another div tag which has the input, and then the button. But what is the parent div doing? The main div. The main div is grouping all of this stuff together. It's grouping an image. It's grouping this whole form with the input button. It's grouping all of those under one single div. So divs are used for grouping stuff, or they can be used to split stuff onto separate lines because they're block elements. So yeah, that's why we might use div. And yeah, we have covered that here. So you can look at div1 and div2, they'll be on separate lines. And span1, span2 are on the same line. Span will only take up as much space as it needs. So I mean, you can see the list of inline tags and block tags, everything on your, you can just look it up and see HTML inline tags and HTML block tags. You can look it up and you can find that. So yeah, we have covered divs, span, and yeah, okay, okay. So we have covered both of these. So the div, is block, and the spans are inline. So yeah, we have covered this. Now, in case of this, if you look at this here, what are the other elements that we have? So we have done two things so far. We have done the H1, H2, and the image. These two are ready. But besides that, what else do we need? We need an input to type in stuff, two inputs, and then a submit button. But if you look at here, I have an other tag. So these inputs and the buttons that I have, they're wrapped in another tag called form tag. Now, what's a form tag? So normally I can put these inputs directly too because they're just HTML tags, right? So I can just put these directly. And input tags, they are called input only, and they'll have a lot of attributes following them. So I can have something like this. So yeah, again, the reason why this was showing red and the image was showing red is because these tags mostly, like the image tag or the input tag, they won't have any text in between. Like if I look at the heading tag, it will have text in between, title will have text in between. But if I look at the image, I am only providing the link in an attribute. I'm providing the alternate text in an attribute. There is nothing I'm putting in between. So in these cases, I can, instead of putting a separate closing tag, I can end it within the same tag by putting a / at the end. So if I do this and if I remove this, even this is logically right. Because anyway, there is no content which will come between a closing and a ending image tag. So I can just end the tag right here by putting a / at the end. So now if I refresh, this will still work. So the image still works. It's not like it's broken or anything.
So that's what. If you have particular tags which don't have any content that come inside it, like between the starting and closing tag, you can end the tag right there. It also looks much cleaner, right? Instead of having separate like ending tags. So this is something you can keep in mind. So yeah, similarly, again for input, you can see it shows red because input, you don't put any stuff between the input tag. Any of the values, attributes, all of that you put, you'll be putting inside the attributes only, just like the image. So there is nothing you'll be putting inside. So to clear that up, I'll just put the closing part in this, sorry. But now let's define the attributes of the input. So any input tag. Now, input is what you see all across any form, whether you do your sign in, login forms, sign up forms, your Google forms, wherever you're typing anything, or wherever you have these checkboxes, radio buttons, like lists, drop down lists that you select from. All of these are provided via your HTML form. So your HTML form has a lot of elements that you can use, like the input. There's also a select element. So select element is something you can use for lists when you have drop down lists and all. So in this case, for our example, we're doing a simple login form. And for login form, we'll be inputting text. So if you're inputting text, emails, passwords, anything like that, you use something called a text form. You use something called an input tag, my bad. Use something called an input tag. And in the input tag, you have a couple of attributes that are previously already defined for input. So in this case, you can just look it up if you want. For input, you have for input, we have a couple of tags by default, and those are you have something called value, you have something called name. So you can have something called type, you can have something called ID, name, all of this. But the main things functionally which are required for us now is you need something called name and minimum. You need something called name and a type. So we just set those two things for now. So name is basically how you will identify this input. Like naming, like someone like how you refer to someone, you refer to them by their name, right? So if you want to refer to this particular input, then you can refer to it via the why is this? Yeah. So name is how you refer to this input tag, and for now, for the sake of this lecture, we can just give it as email, but we won't be using this much. The other important tag that you can put, the attribute you can put is type. So type will define the type of text you're putting inside this. Now, I can put any kind of text inside this type. I can put numbers, I can put emails, I can put passwords. Now, imagine I put a password. Like, imagine I don't specify any type for this, and I don't want to, imagine this will be my password input. So if I type in the password, everyone can see what my password is. How do you get something like this? Like the one where the password is not visible and you have just dots representing for that. So this is where you control using type. In your type, you can put the type of text you'll be putting in your input, whether it's a password, whether it's an email, or just it's just normal text, something like that. So in this type, you can put for our case now, let's just put something as email. Email is an available type. Again, you can look this up. And another available type that we have is password. So let's have an input type of email and one more of type password. And let's just name this with password for now. So if I reload my site, I should be having two of these. Let me remove this for now. Yeah. So if you look at this, I'm going to have two inputs, but I told you, inputs are inline elements. That's why the subtext to each other. How do you split them into separate elements? You can use a div. So I can wrap each of these in a div. Wrap each of these in a div, and this should come on separate lines. So they're coming on separate lines. Again, there is no space in between them at all. So that is something we will cover in styling. Besides that, we have image, we have these inputs. So let me just move these inputs below the image. And we have a button. So button is again a tag called button. And inside between the buttons, you can put the text you will have in the button. Like here it says submit, right? Whatever text you want to show up inside the button, you will put it between the buttons. So between those, I can have something like submit again. And this should show up as a button. So if you look at it, you have welcome, you have the image, two inputs, and then you have submit. And the problem with this is it doesn't look that great, right? How do I go from here to this. I've already built the skeleton of my whole thing. So I've already built how it should, what are the basic components. I've built the H2, image inputs and all of this. How do I get from here till here? This is where the styling part comes in. And for styling, we use something called CSS. So in CSS, you can put the CSS is again, like it's not exactly, it's like a styling language, and uh, you can define how your HTML should look on a browser. So there are three ways you can actually put the CSS you need for the HTML. Either I can put it right in the same, like inside an HTML tag only. That's called inline CSS. For example, this H2 that I have, every HTML tag, like the body or this, I told it before, I showed this before. Like there's an attribute called style. Style is basically, again, you're setting the CSS, but you're setting it only for that H2. So for this H2, I'm setting it style, and I inside that be a string. So inside this, I need to put the CSS text. And for CSS, again, there's a lot of properties that you have. You can look up the properties and figure out what properties you want to use. But for now, I'll cover a few basic ones. For example, there is a property called color. Color is used to decide the color of the text. So if I put color and red, now my text will become this particular text, H2, because for H2, I'm setting the style as color of red. Yeah, for CSS, you will have the property first, then colon, and then the value, and you should terminate with a semicolon. If I want to put something else, I can put something like background color, like something like background color, and then that I can put as blue. So I can put background color is blue, and then color is this, but all of these should end with a semicolon, and it's like a key value pair. So you have color of red, background color of blue. Now if I reload this, so background color of blue, and then text color of red. So like this is many other, and yeah, so this is called inline CSS. So inline for a tag only, you can set the style right there. Now this is good, but then when you're building very big sites, you can't put the CSS like for every single tag. You can't keep putting the tag here and there. Like imagine I want to use the same text color. Like I want to use the red color, not just for this H2. I have some other H6 somewhere. I want to use the same red. Will I keep typing the style is equal to color red for all of these? It's like extra work for me, right? Wouldn't it be better if I had all of these styles centrally defined, like in somewhere else, either in the same HTML file or somewhere outside the file? So that's where you can use either in file CSS or external CSS. So in the same file, you can define a tag called style tag. Even that's a valid HTML tag. So it will be something like this style. And inside this, I can put the CSS styling that I want to put, something like this. So I can put all of the stuff inside this. Or instead of this, I can, best practice usually is to put all of the stuff in a separate file. So when you're doing anything in web dev, like anything in web development, it's usually good to separate your concerns. You know the exact functions of each of these. Like you know HTML is supposed to be skeleton, you know CSS is supposed to be styling, you know JavaScript is supposed to be for the functional part. So it is better if you also maintain them in three different files, right? Or the separate files. It doesn't make sense if you put your CSS file also in here, and like you pollute your HTML with your CSS. It'll be much harder to keep track of like where is this thing coming from, what is doing the actual final work. So it's much better if you separate all of the stuff and put in different files. So for now, we can develop another file. So just create a new file. Just call it whatever you want. I'm just going to call it style.css. You can give it any name, but end it with the .css extension. So yeah, inside this CSS, I can define whatever I define. So you can see this color, background color, all of these properties, I can again use them. But in order to use them, I need to use something called a selector. Now, CSS selectors, they're used to select a particular element. Now I have a bunch of elements, right? See, I have a body element, I have a H2, image, divs, inside that input, button, all these. How do I select a particular element and only apply to that? Like, imagine I have this H2 here, and I also, let me just remove this for now. Okay, so imagine I have two H2s. Okay, welcome 1 and welcome 2. Now, I told you that I want to put all of this in the separate files because it's much easier to maintain, right? But imagine you only want to make this welcome 1 as blue, but you don't want welcome 2 to be blue. So in that case, you might be very tempted to put it here only. You put a style here and put color of blue. But instead of that, you can still work with an external file, but you can only select this H2. How do I select only that H2? Like how do I select only that particular HTML tag and put the styling for that? For that, we use something called selectors. So selectors can be of three types. They can either be the tag selector, a class selector, or an ID. So the tag selector is you're going to select the actual HTML tag on you. You're just going to mention the full HTML tag. So imagine I mentioned H2, and in CSS, after you mention whatever the selector is, whether it's tag name, class name, ID name, whatever, after that whole selector, you open a set of flower bases, and inside that you define what styling you want. Now I said I want color of blue, right? So let me just put this in for now. Now if I go reload this here, this won't work. I remove the styling, but I put H2 should become blue. Why is my H2 not becoming blue? So this is where linking the file comes in, and this is why I was stressing about why your head tag is also used to preload files. So besides the head, besides the title tag in the head, you can also put something called a link tag. And the link tag is used to link other files that you need to render this whole body. And before this whole body is rendered on the website, you first need to send this also to the client, something like that. So inside this link tag, so I can have something like this. Just copy. Yeah, so this link tag has again two attributes. A href is basically the same link to that file. So the styles.css is in the same level as the file. It's actually style.css. So style.css is in the same level as the folder. So it can refer to this. And relation. What relation does this particular file have with respect to the HTML? So in our case, we wanted to be a style sheet. I told you CSS stands for cascading style sheet. So this is a style sheet. Style sheet is just it just means that it's used to style, whatever your HTML is. So this relation has to be the CSS has a relation of style sheet. So you need to put relation is equal to style sheet, and then href the link to where your style is or your file is. So style.css. So inside this, you can put your href to your style.css, and now it will load up your style.css file before displaying your web page. Now, if I go refresh this, so you guys can type this out. So link relation of style sheet and the href to the file. So just the file name because it's on the same level. So now if I go refresh this, I have both my H2 as blue, but this is not something I want, right? I told you I want only my welcome one to be blue. How do I select only one particular welcome? Because right now I'm selecting all H2s, but I don't want to select all H2s. I only want to select one particular thing. So for that, you have extra attributes that you can put on at the HTML element. So besides, I told you, you can have a style tag on every element. Like that, you can also have an ID tag and a class tag on every element. Any element, it can be a body element, image element, div element. You can have this attribute called class or ID. So for this, imagine for this H2, I can set a class of say heading 2. Yeah. Now, if I want to select this particular heading 2, or let me just give this heading 2. So I give this a class of heading 2, and I just want to select this particular thing. Now, instead of specifying H2 as my selector, I can specify that heading 2 class as my selector now. But how will I tell that this is going to be a class file and it's not? This is a class name and it's not a tag name. For that, we use a dot. If I'm using IDs, I'm using a hash. I'll come to that again. So dot specifies that this is a class name. So it will look for something with the class name of heading 2 and assign the sign to that. So where is this class here? There's a class of heading 2 to H2. It will look for the stat and assign the style to it, color of blue. So now when I refresh, only this thing has my, like blue color. So besides this, imagine, so I told you there's also something called ID. It's a more specific selector. So I'll show you how we can use our ID too. So imagine I put the same class to this also, right? And instead of this, here I put something like say text decoration. So text decoration is one of the CSS properties that we have, and this you can use to set underline. So I can set text decoration to underline my text. Let me just remove this one. So now when I look at this, both my text will be underlined because I've given both the class of heading 2 and it's going to look at my HTML, okay, which has heading 2, which has heading 2. Both of these have heading 2. I'm going to apply the styling to it. What is the styling? It will have underline. So it's going to look like that. But imagine I wanted to apply for all heading 2's text decoration, but I also wanted to put only for this particular H1, I wanted to give it a blue color. So I can use an ID to filter more, and I can make this like this will be my welcome one or something. So now, if If I want, besides the heading, all heading tools will get the style. But if I want that specific ID has to be unique. So this H2 can't have the same ID welcome one. Many tags can have the same class. So this has heading two, this has heading two. Many tags can have the same class, but ID has to be unique to a tag. So I've set an ID of welcome one here. So if I want to tap into that ID, I use a hash and then the name of the tag. So I have welcome one, name of the ID. So inside this, I can put my color. So I put color of blue wherever my ID is welcome one. And ID can only be welcome one for one tag because it has to be unique for every tag. So ID of welcome one is only there for my welcome one. So my welcome one will get both properties. It will get both the underline from heading two and it will get the blue color from welcome one class. So if I refresh this, it's blue color and it's underlined. So this is how I can set more specific styling if I want. Now for the sake of this thing, I've already prepared a style sheet. And in this I've set some few properties and I'll just go through this. So here I'm just selecting the body tag. I'm giving it a width of 100%. Font weight is used to set the thickness of the text, like how thick the text should be. If it's very thin, means it's going to be something like this. Like here, this is around 300 pixels thick. But if you want it to be very thin, then you can set to something like 100. So font weight is used to set the thickness. Font family is literally used to set the font. Like imagine you want to use Times New Roman, some other font, whatever font you want. You can set that in your font family. And then again here. So here I'm selecting the image tag. And for the image tag, I'm giving it a height of 200 pixels. So in case of web development, most of the units that you'll be using, there are three main units that you use. One is pixels, or M, or REM. So like I won't cover M and REM for now, but yeah, in most of the cases you will use something called pixels, and pixels literally mean the pixels on your screen. So right now I'm rendering this on 1920 to 1080 pixels. That means column wise there are 1080 pixels along the height of my screen and 1920 pixels along the row of my screen. So every single pixel I can set based on that. So this should occupy 200 pixels out of those, something like that. So height, so here I'm setting, I want the height to be 200 pixels, width to be 200 pixels, and I'm setting a border radius. Border radius is used to set the borders, like border radius is literally what I mean. So border radius is used to set curvatures if you want. Like if you want to make something circular or round, if you want to round the corners, then you can give a border radius property. So in this case, I've given border radius of 100%. That means that it completely make it a circle. So, and then I've set a margin of 0 and auto. So margin has both a left and a right. So this first thing will give you the margin. So margin is used to separate different stuff. So in this case, when I look at this, there is a separation between this input and this image, right? But then, yeah, so there's some separation between this and this. So in order to set the separation between these, I use the margin. So yeah, I have a margin here. I'm saying the margin on top and bottom should be 0, but left and right it should be auto. By setting it to auto, it's going to center it. So let me just use this styles.css instead of style.css. I just discard this. And you guys can copy this one if you want later. I'll send all the files. And yeah, here I'll just refer the styles.css instead of style.css. Now, when I reload this, image is circular. I've set the font family to be monospace and all. So yeah, so you have these inputs and all of that. Now we are very much close to this, right? We have gone from here to here. We need to go. Now this is where I'm really talking about my JS thing. Actually, I think we should hurry up and finish the JS thing too. So yeah, besides this, you can have so in my styles.css, I'm setting all of my styling, right? I'm setting what you should have on this. This is very hard for me to set every single individual styling. So that's why I have something called styling libraries. Just like how you have your math class in Java, where you can do like math.pow, or you have a scanner class. You have list of list of pre-made methods, all of that. We also have something called styling libraries. So styling libraries have this list of pre-made classes. So they'll have a class like called BG something. That class will already have a set of CSS properties. For me to just include that styling, all I need to do is just add that class name. So I've already showed you how to add the class name. So I can have like a class of box decoration, BG, and if you have multiple class names, that will separate them by space. So like you have box decoration size, BG gradient to R, all of these is separate them by space. Now, how do I import this external library. In order to import that, I need to include that in my head tag. And in my case, I'm using Tailwind CSS. You guys can look this up. It's very simple. I already have mentioned this on the website. Tailwind CSS is an amazing styling library. It's something I use personally. So in order to include this styling library so that all these class names work, you'll have to include it in the head. That is before the body is loaded, you want all of these class names to be ready, right? So you can include this in a script tag. Script tag is used to put all of the JavaScript that you need to execute before, like any of the JavaScript that you need to like execute or link to. In this case, it's just going to give the list of all the class names and it will allow my HTML to use this. So I've imported it via the script, and after doing that, I can use my class names. If you want to know what these class names are, I can just look this up in Tailwind CSS. So in Tailwind CSS, they already have this in their website. So imagine I want to do something uh, like font family. I want to set a different font family. I want font sans instead of font like more space. If I want to do that, I can just set the class name directly like this. So class is equal to font sans and it will add that styling to it. So I won't have to physically write it. So yeah, this is with respect to external libraries and how you can use them to style this. So this again, I'll give you the file. You guys can go through it. So at this point, yeah, I'll be touching the new.html because this already has the class names and all. So after adding these class names, we will get something like this. So after adding the class names, we'll get something like this. But now my final part, my file is still not functional, right? My file is still not functional. So if it's not functional, what will I do? I just have the input elements, but nothing will be displayed. I want something to be displayed and all of that. I need my JavaScript file. So coming finally to my JavaScript file. So JavaScript, I told you again, general purpose OOPS language, you can use it for a lot of things, but we use it for web mostly. And in case of JavaScript, the main thing that we do is we can do form handling in a lot of ways. So this is a form here. So in this form, I have an email type input and a password type input. So I want to implement the functionality that when I type something and when I click on submit, it should show it in my console, or it should just alert me with that, something like that. So I can have alert here instead. So let me just type this here now. So I can see it's showing my email. So it's showing my email and the password that I type inside. So how do I get this to come about? So for this, first of all, in JavaScript, you define functions using the function keyword followed by the function name, and again parameters, argument list that you have, and you have the block, so flower basis. And parameters here, you don't have to define the data type like in Java and all. So this is very dynamically typed. So I'll explain what this is, but before that, we need to link this JavaScript file to our HTML. So how do I make sure that this HTML file can use this JavaScript functions that I'm writing here? In order to link that, I'll be using the same script tag, and usually you link this at the end of the body. So after displaying all of that, you link this here. So we'll have script with the source as my index.js is where I have all the functions defined, and I'll be linking this way. So in order to test if this is linked, I can just use the console here and call in the functions I've defined. For example, I have a function called display status. So I can just try calling that function here. If I can call the function, then that means my JavaScript is linked to my HTML. So yeah, we do this. So this is my main functional part now. So what am I doing in this whole thing? I'm having a function called handle submit, and I have a variable. So variables you define using const. Const is like a constant equivalent that you define in C++, all of that. So this is not going to change its value. I also have like var or let for variables that will change the value. So I've defined a variable called a constant called font, and that will be document.querySector. I'm doing this whole thing. So what is this whole thing? Let me break it down. So document will give you access to the whole HTML document. So all of this thing that's there inside body. So document will give you access to that. On document object in JavaScript, you have a couple of functions which exist on them. So you have something like get element by tag, get element by ID, or get element by class. So imagine I want to get the specific. Imagine I want to get this h1 which had that like ID of welcome one. So I can do document dot get element by ID welcome one. So then it will refer to that particular element, and I can do stuff using JavaScript now. I don't have to type everything in HTML anymore. I can add extra elements if I want. I can do all of that programmatically. For that, we use something called a DOM. I won't explain that again. It's too much in detail. You guys can look it up. It's called the document object model. So whatever you have in HTML will be converted into equivalent objects in JavaScript, so that you can manipulate those objects, you can add objects, remove objects, and all of that. So that's exactly what we're doing here. So on document, you also have a function called query setter. Query setter will look across everything. It will look across classes, it will look across tags, IDs, all of that. So I'm using query setter. I'm selecting the form element. So this form element in my HTML, and inside that only I put the input, and I put the button. Okay, so I'm selecting that form, and on that form, and all of these DOM elements that I have, they have a function that you can use to attach event listeners. So what's an event listener? Event listeners are like every single thing that happens in like JavaScript. Imagine I'm typing this right now. If I'm typing and I'm doing this, the value of this input is changing, right? That itself is an event. It's called an on-change event. If you're submitting it, that's a submit event. So everything that happens in your in your website, all those happen in form of events. These events have specific predefined names. Like a submit event is there on a form. So when I submit a form, it's called a submit event. So when you're adding event listeners, you need to know which event you're attaching for which particular like DOM element. So in case of form, it already has an event called submit. So I am checking for the submit. So whenever the submit event happens, I want to trigger this function. So that's what this whole piece of code says. So document.query selector first get out of the form element, and I'll attach an event listener that says whenever the submit event happens, call the handle submit method. And what happens in my handle submit method? So in all of these cases, so I'm attaching an event listener, right? In all of these, whenever I call this function, to the function, an event object will be passed. The event object can vary based on what the event is. But in case of the submit, in case of form submits and all of that, these event objects will have a property called target. Okay. And these targets will refer to, the target will be an array. So it will contain the list of the stuff that is there inside the form. For example, now inside my form, I have an input element, and a button. So all of these will be made into an array. So if I try to, so if I want to console log anything, like if I want to view anything in my console, like how I see C++, I can just do console log, and I can console log whatever I want. So in my case, imagine I want to console log this event.target. So if I do this and if I refresh, and if I do the submit here, and something like this, so you can see this. It's returning this whole form HTML, but it also has a lot of properties in it. And this has an array, 3 elements, 0, 1, 2, 3. Each of these represents the form element. Like one is the input 1, this is the input 2, and this is the button. Now again, this is an array. So how do you access the elements of an array? You can use the index. So event.target of 0 will refer to this first input, my email input. This of 1 will refer to my password input. So this will refer my password input. Event.target 1 will refer to my password input. Now these inputs themselves, they have 2 properties. They have a name property and a value property, and they'll have many more properties, but by default they have a name property. Name property is the name you give to that input. So you remember when I was talking about this name thing that you give here. So you can give a name of email. So if you want to view that name here, so you can put event.target of 0.name. So that will be the email input tag's name. So that's this email only. It will print out email. If I want to get a value in that, I use the value property. So this will give me the value that is there in my email input, and this will give me the value that's there in my password input. And alert is a JavaScript function that you already have in by default, and this will trigger an alert, a pop-up alert, which will show up in your browser, something like this. So that's what I'm doing here. So it's going to trigger an alert, and it's going to put 2 values. So what are the 2 values? It's going to print the value inside my event.target of 0. That is the first input, which is the email input's value. This is my second input, that is my password input's value. So it's going to print both of these separated by a space. So this is this, and it's going to, in case of the console, it's going to console of the event.target, the whole object, which again has this whole array and all of that. So yeah, this is how you would mostly do a general form in most cases. And yeah, one more thing is event.prevent default. So what are we doing with the event.prevent default? I didn't cover this much. So in a form element, I told you like some things will have to mandatorily have some attributes, right? Like if I'm having a link tag, that anchor tag, I need to mandatorily provide the link, right? There's no point of specifying the tag. So in case of form tags, you usually have, again, there are mandatory, but then in case of form tags, you have these attributes called method and action. So method refers to the HTTP method is going to use to send the information, and action is will refer to like the URL where it should send the information to, like this email and password where I'm sending it. So in our case, we don't want it to send this information anywhere. And when I click on submit form, we don't want the form to submit anywhere, right? We just want to get access of the values. So you can prevent the default behavior of the form. So normally when the form is submitted, it should reroute to some other site, some other thing, and it should send the data. But if you want to prevent the default action of the form, so if you want to prevent that, you can use your event dot prevent default. So it will prevent the default behavior of whatever that event is. In our case, we're trying to do the submit event on the form. So it will prevent whatever will happen during a normal submit. Now, if I remove this and if I try, see, this will redirect to this thing with the hash because I'm saying the final URL that I'm giving here has an action of hash. So it will try to redirect there, but I don't want it to redirect there. I just wanted to stop its default behavior and just print its value. So that's why I had that even not prevent default. So yeah, that's mostly summing up today's whole workshop. So I know it's gone a little past time. I'm sorry for that. But yeah, I hope I've been pretty detailed and well enough to cover up what you guys need to learn and like generally know at least like all the whole different three files and what each file does. How do you write something in each file, like a CSS file, a JavaScript file, HTML file, and how do you link these files? How do you test if a file is linked? All of that. So that's all. So this is our whole website, like a basic web page. It doesn't do anything right now. But yeah, you guys can build upon this. There's so much more you guys can learn. There's frameworks you guys can learn. There's a lot in blockchain you guys can learn that you can integrate with your web development. So yeah, this sums up my session. And if you guys have any doubts, you can ask me.
So thank you, Vaiti. So if you have any doubts, this is a Q&A session, so you can ask. So before that, Rachita, are you there? Yeah, yeah, you're audible. So
Thank
okay, yeah, okay, thank you. So guys, if you have any kind of questions, so this is the Q&A. So you can ask anything. So the mentors will be there. So Nandeesh is there and Vaiti is there. So you can ask anything about the session, or else like you want to ask anything, you can.
guys, you can ask anything. We can have a healthy discussion, like
And it
anything.
doesn't have to be about the session too. Like if you guys already know the basics and you want to explore something more, something more like intermediate or something more advanced, you guys can ask, me about that too.
Yeah, yeah. Yesterday, many people were just been asking, what's hackathon and how can we make a contribution into it. So at least just try to ask now. So this is your chance. So anybody, if you are uncomfortable, you can just ping it out in the chat box. So we can
Yeah.
just ping it out there.
I mean, it's just a discussion. Like, you can just with
Yeah,
nothing.
yeah, yeah. If it is feedback, it is also okay. You can
Yeah,
give
feedback.
anything about it. So at least anyone.
Is
At
it
least by like a show of hands, how many
yeah.
guys did you? How many guys thought the session was useful? Maybe.
Yeah.
You guys can raise your hands. That's fine.
Yeah, you can just raise your hands at least. Yeah, okay. Savitra, Gaurav, Patel. So, okay. Amulya, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
And if you guys have any doubts, something it doesn't have to be related to the session. It can be in some other domain that you want to explore to anything like, or some kind of tips that you want to know for the hackathon coming up. Like I can give you guys possible project ideas that you guys can look up and try to see how to implement stuff like that. It can be anything. Is there anything you guys want to ask? Please?
Yeah, we're having a lot of messages in the chat box. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dhanush.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sridevi. So, any feedback, at least just try to open up your mic and speak out. So, it wasn't great helpful for us. Okay. Nobody. We're just expecting only one, at least one.
I mean, it's tapping around chat box. It's fine.
Yeah. Okay. It's okay. Okay, Nandesh, you just said something. I can just show it at some of the websites. So you can go to go. So we can just take 5 more minutes.
Okay. No, no, it's totally fine. If there was any ideas that the particular audience wanted to explore, we could really validate that idea, and we can refine it, and probably they can do that for the hackathon. If not, like,
Yeah.
oh, I was just expecting different ideas from the audience. Like, okay, I'm trying to do this. How can I just realize it? And we can give like a 30-second, roadmap to do that. Vaiti, I think, has got very depth knowledge about web dev. So I think it's gonna be a healthy discussion. So I thought we could spend 2 minutes over there. And yeah, I have like a few ideas. Like our college implements something called result analysis. So I guess you can just go to websites and create, like, write a web program that will go and fetch the results of any 5 students or 10 students and put it in a graphical format. So put it in a bar chart or a graph chart, and calculate a CGPA. That'll be good. That will be the first step. That is a good simple project to start with.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I
And
think,
if you guys have coding clubs, you can start making, like stuff together. So you can make a club website. You can make an admin website for the club. Like imagine your club does events, right? You would want to generate certificates for that. You can set up a Node.js script for that. Like I have something like that, and we have an admin site for SBI. So you can generate certificates using that. Like where you guys can come together and solve problems that you have in your college. Like simple thing, anything that you go from like club event organizing or to the post-event logistics, like certificates and all of that. So there's a lot of stuff you guys can do together. And if you guys have not had much developer exposure or something, I think the hackathon would be really nice exposure because, like, regardless of where you are, there is like regardless of where you are, it's always good to go to a competition, like whichever competition it is. It doesn't have to be like developer. Like even in a sports competition, when you go to a sports competition, you will only realize how many people are that much better than you or how many people like know so much. But if you go and talk to them, you can find out what their practice routine is and all of that. It opens up a lot of conversation for your own improvement. So I think like you guys should all sign up for the hackathon. Like even if you don't have much to contribute, even if you make a very simple web page, whatever, you guys can still just sign up for the hackathon. Yeah, you guys can use Bootstrap for anything. Like any standing library comes.
Yeah, I think Savitra, you can get your answers. Yeah, sure, you can use Bootstrap in the hackathon, and any frameworks have been allowed.
Yeah.
So, as Vaiti mentioned, you can just do any kind of web pages. At least just try to do in the front end. So you can do anything and stuff. So, any questions again at last? So at least any feedback? Anyone?
I think it's fine. Give it feedback in the chat.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you, Vaithi, and thank you, Nandeesh.
Thank you, guys.
Great journey.
It was fun.
Thanks, bro. It was pleasure here to be here.
Okay. Thank
It
you
was
so
a pleasure
much.
being here.
Thank you, guys. Thank you all being here.
Thank you all. And yeah, sorry for extending it by half an hour. Yeah.
So we'll end up the session, and thank you so much, guys.
Sure. Bye. Have a nice day.
Thank
Have
you.
a nice day.
Thank you.